Hello, everybody. Welcome to Celebrate Southern Africa. My name is Dawn Denton, and I have the greatest pleasure of chatting to Jill Wallace again. I chatted to you about a year ago. Is that right?
Yep, it was, well, I think it was 2 years ago because, or maybe it was a year ago. Sorry, Dawn, I don't remember. I remember Zebra came out in 21. So we've chatted after that, I think.
So you have since been very busy writing, have you not?
I have, but it took me a good couple of years after Zebra to wrap my head around a series because I'd never written a series before. And I'd never written a book that wasn't inspired by a true story. So this was all my own imaginings, and it was quite a scary place to be because I wasn't swinging on the coattails of somebody else's life. So this was something I had to churn up in my own. So it was pretty scary.
So
But
just give us a little recap on what Zebra was about, just for those people who didn't
oh,
know about it
sure.
before.
Zebra, there's a little peep at the book, um, which is an actual photograph of my husband and his Zulu best friend in the Drakensberg. So Zebra, the log line for Zebra is Zebra friends by fate, enemies by destiny. And it's about a Zulu boy and a white boy who become best friends in the Drakensberg Mountains. And the white boy's dad owns a hotel, a remote hotel. And Papin is the horse boy who looks after the horses. And he actually saves Jock's life when he's attacked by baboons because little Jock is trying, 4-year-old Jock is trying to save a dog. It's been bitten by a baboon. So Papin swoops in on his horse and saves the little boy, and he's commissioned by Jock's dad to teach the little guy about the ways of the wild and how to survive in the mountains because it's a really treacherous terrain. So that was Papin's job. And at first he was kind of resentful because he didn't want to be a nursemaid to a white boy. But soon they become really good friends. And over the course of their little lives together, they suck up each other's cultures. Uh, Jock, who's a little white boy, is he loves everything Zulu and he's hungry for the culture and he learns the culture by being in the midst of it. And Papin is hungry for vast knowledge. So while Jock is being taught by the tutor that his dad brings in, well, taught we use the term loosely because he has no inclination to learn anything. He's watching the eagles out of the window of the Rondabel where he's being taught up in the mountains, and he's checking his snake skin he and Papin found before he got into the. So, but Papin is absorbing all that knowledge and savoring it. And one of the saddest things is when Jock goes off to boarding school and Papin runs after the car down the mountain. And it's so sad because these little boys are being pulled apart. And then Jock goes to school and he hates it. He runs away, he does all sorts of things. It's a miserable time. And he misses his friends so much. And Papin's about 5 years older. So he learns how to write and he sends Jock letters to tell him what the guests said and what the horses are doing and what if a dog had a puppy or one of the kittens, got into trouble. Mm. Jock lives for these letters. It's his only connection to this beautiful life that he's now living in with shoes and socks on because he was barefoot for the first 6 years of his life. And anyway, they eventually grow apart because Papin is influenced from his uncle, who's a member of the ANC, and he wants Papin to leave his cushy life and be the man he's meant to be and go to Johannesburg um, and so he plants seeds of discontent. And Jock hoards these letters from Papin. He treasures them, so he never writes back because he hates writing, he hates spelling, he hates all things that aren't of natural resource. And the bully breaks open his I hope you don't hear the dogs playing in the background. Breaks open his locker, and Bosch stands on a dustbin and reads these letters from Papin, Jock, and he says his best friend is a Zulu, so Jock gets a tremendous amount of flack. These love letters from his Zulu, and Jock tells Papin not to write to him.
Oh.
And Papin is deeply hurt. And anyway, these little nuggets of discontent come into their lives. And the last straw is when they're on a hike, and uh, Jock has just defended his friendship, and he can't wait to tell Papin about it. And he comes home from school and he's beaten up the bigger boot base, and he's so happy. And he comes back and tell Papin, and he doesn't have a chance. And they go off to take a hike for the hotel guests, and one is uh, bitten by an adder, and he won't let Papin suck at his leg, and the poison has to come out. And none of the other guests want to do it. So, and Papin won't let Jock do it because his teeth are loose because of the fight that he had with Foot, and the poison could get into his gums. And that's really the last straw for Papin. And when Jock gets home from school the next weekend, he's gone. And then we follow Papin for a while, and we see how cruel Johannesburg was to him. And he eventually is nurtured by an ANC, but one of the guys in the ANC, and he falls in love with his daughter, and then, and so on. So they are split up. Jock's dad sells the hotel. So Jock not only lost his best friend, but he lost his place where all he's known. He lost his horses, he lost his dogs, and they moved to Durban. His mom and he moved to Durban. So it was a very sad parting. Anyway, I'd say about 40% of the book is about Loot, a lieutenant in the South African Army, reluctant soldiers all, as we know them to be. And they are after this Lwazi, who's called the Butcher, and he's the worst of the terrorists. Anyway, and then they meet on opposite sides of the battlefield, Jock and Papin, under their new guises. And we have to decide if blood is thicker than water, because they became blood brothers during their tenure. So it's a very dramatic story, but it's very funny, and I'm always proud to say only 3 men have confessed that they cried during the reading of this book, but I think a whole lot more have cried. Certainly a lot of women, but only 3 have confessed.
So you made mention of the fact that you've gone now, you've written 2 more books since we spoke, and are they purely fictional, these other 2 books?
Well, Donnie, that's a very good question, because one often bleeds one's own life into whatever we write.
Yeah.
So the series is called Time Flies, and I was a hostie for SAA for years during the late 70s and mid 80s, and international. And so, it was such an unusual experience, and it was such a spoiled existence in those days. We were so lucky as air hostesses and stewards. When we'd fly into London, we'd have 5 days in a beautiful Kensington Palace hotel. They'd pay us the equivalent of 3 meals a day in that hotel, and we'd eat curry and rice down the drag, and then go to shows on the West End, and we'd do London, and we'd go on train trips. So it was a really privileged lifestyle, but the job itself was murderous, because it just, it just killed your body, because you never knew what time of day it was. Your body didn't. And so I had that in mind, and I brainstormed with a number of authors, and uh, just didn't know where I was going to take this book. But I knew the essence would probably be 80s, just at the edge of the golden age of travel, when people actually dressed up to get on a flight. And something to do with the crew rest. I knew the crew rest had to come into being because few people even knew there were crew rests in those years because they were well hidden. Excuse me. Anyway, so I wrote I actually launched a Kickstarter campaign to get my first book, which is Timeless Beginnings. The series is called Time Flies, and the book is called Timeless Beginnings, the number one. And this is the story of Lucky. Lucky's the protagonist. She's a hermit. She was in South African air hostess. Uh, she's got a lot of hang-ups. She also she was born with a call, which not many people know what a call is. I know you do, but it's that skein that is over your head, and it's snipped off so the baby can breathe. That piece of skin is known to be very, very lucky. And in this story, the midwife asks for that call so she can cross back to Ireland over the sea back to her Flynn, who is waiting for her. So she's born with a call, so she has these psychic abilities, and she hates them because they get her into trouble at the convent. She sees all these people, she chats to them, and the nuns give her help. And all her life, she's had to suppress them. And she, when she's very little, she goes on a flight with her mother and father, and they are trying to remember the days where they were going from Zambia to South Africa on a plane, and they'd lied about her age. She was meant to be under 2 to get to fly free, but she was like 2 and a bit. So they said she was 18 months on the form, and she wouldn't shut up on this flight. So the air hostess found her so cute and charming that she asked her to pass the sugar around the sugar after her going down the aisle. So she was thrilled to bits. So ever since then, Lucky has wanted to be an air hostess. So she goes through the whole and kind of takes us through the process of what that was like when you were, if you were to become an air hostess in those days. Also fraught with trauma, and but Lucky at present it's 30 years since those days plus, and she dreamt while she was sleeping in the crew rest. She dreamt about her soulmate in another lifetime, and she um she was she needed to find him. She didn't know how, where she was going to find him in this lifetime. So have you ever read Brian Weiss, Many Lives, Many Masters?
No.
It's a brilliant account, and that's really what inspired these books. He is a psychiatrist, and he is a very pragmatic, scientifically. Um, he's a doctor of science, and he has no place for fanciful um, alternatives. And this book called Many Lives, Many Masters is an account of him doing psychoanalysis and not getting anywhere with a girl who had multiple phobias. And she eventually allows him to do hypnosis on her. And he can then, and she goes and she becomes a completely different person under hypnosis. Back to Egypt in 92 BC, where she had a pot in the one arm and a child in another, and a tsunami came, and she's terrified of water. So each of her phobias was explained by a past life.
Wow.
And then he, as a scientist, had to rethink his whole being, basically, because anyway, it's a fascinating book, and it really sparked my imagination, and I think I know that that's what inspired these books. So anyway, so Lucky now, years later, sorry, she dreams about her soulmate, and amazingly enough, about a year later, SAA's, calling it Air Baobab, is flying
Love
to
it.
the to the US, and there is a failure in the instruments. Now, this actually happened while I was flying, not to me, but to a plane. And I don't remember where it was that they landed, but in my story, they land on this tiny marine base in the middle of the Atlantic
Wow.
and USA Marine Base. And she gets off the plane, and they come down the chute because you had to come down the chute because they didn't know if the plane was going to blow up. The instruments were dead. And she's caught by this guy, and his name is Roy, and he catches her, and they know. They know they've known each other before. And he's not a wussy pussy. He's a big, strong, strapped Marine. And anyway, they have 2 days while they're trying to discern how this plane came down. And it's fascinating what it was that brought them down, and very serendipitous. Anyway, while this is being discovered, people are housed in mess halls, and the crew is looking after the passengers as they would in a hotel. Anyway, they have this fabulous love affair, 3 days. And then she flies off to New York, and he stays on base, but he works undercover, so he's all over the place. So they write to each other, and they know they're meant for each other. They just know. So they talk about their future so confidently. And all of a sudden, he disappears. He's just gone. And she knows that he can't be gone because she he couldn't be a liar and a cheat and a bastard. he's
Yeah.
so he's so so she's been searching for him for 30 years. So when the book opens, she's moved to America basically to find him, to hope that he can find her. And she's moved to a town called Hull, which is where we lived, and that's why I'm saying it's a lot of it. And in the house we lived in, it's my best house. If there's a heaven, that's where I'll be living after this one. um, and she moves there with her. She's dog bedorned, so she has this Aussie Shepherd who's on the back of. She's
Oh.
there, and there's he. His name is Tula, coincidentally like our dog Tula, which, as you know, means hush. And Tula is very empathetic. He knows when she's about to have a panic attack. He's an amazing dog, and he's got diabetes, which is relevant to the story. Uh, anyway, she's cut for. She says to the universe, "I'm done. I've been looking for him for 30 years. There's this lovely man who's one of the FBI. She's now a psychic for the FBI. She helps them in cold cases, finding victims, and current cases to find the perps. So that's what she does for a living. And because she had to suppress her, for various reasons, she had to suppress her psychic ability for those years she was in the airline. And so she's the universe. Looks, I'm done now. There's a perfectly lovely FBI agent that I could be looking at very seriously. And here you are. When are you going to deliver him? I'm done. And the universe says, makes her smell oranges. And she doesn't know oranges. What the hell are you talking about? And she hears not the smell. So she says, not the smell, orange or color. Yeah, color. So she goes, she said, so she thinks about it a bit, and she thinks, orange tail, that's what we used to call our aircrafts. So she thinks, I wonder if and then she hears, help others to help yourself. And she said, no way, that's going a bit too far. She's a hermit. She doesn't like people. She likes her dog. She likes her privacy. She's not getting involved with people. And she said, help others to help yourself, says this voice. And she goes and she finds the site where these old crew members, chat and stuff. So she puts in a post, and it says, if you had a weird dream in the crew rest of a 747 during the 70s or 80s, email me. And she gets 4 responses. And now she's in the midst of a case, um, and these 4 women are going to arrive at her doorstep. She couldn't meet them. She would ideally she would have wanted them. They all over the world. These 4 women. She doesn't even know where they're coming from. She doesn't even know who they are. And they're coming to her home for 6 days because they need to sort out and find all of their soulmates that they may have lost during the who they dreamt about in the crew list, who were clearly from another life. So they converge in the middle of her trying to solve a case, and um, her dog has just been sprayed by a skunk, and she's in the one arrives early, the one that she most doesn't want to see, because she finds out that the queen was feared in the airline. She's an airline legend. She used to slather people with Shakespearean insults, and people used to cower from her. She's mean as stink, and she's in the middle of naked as a jaybird in the shower with her dog, pouring tomato juice on to get the skunk smell off. And the queen arrives, crown and all, and sits on the toilet and tells her what to do. So that's kind of how these women start coming, and they arrive, lock, stock, and barrel from all parts. Nobody knows, none of them know each other's backstory. So each book, and they find they have so much in common. So there's a ton of airline fun in this because it's all the old legends that I've incorporated into what they can remember, and all the
And so did
fun
you have to
stuff.
draw a lot on your memory, or did you also go and connect with people who were on the airlines with you at the time?
I didn't. Well, my best friend was a hostie with me. She was in first class, and she's named in them. So she as my bestie. So she was easy, but she's she said, "Oh, I don't remember that one. I don't remember that one." So she's not a big help. But most of these, I mean, a lot of these are airline legend. You heard the story and heard the story. So I didn't really have to dig too deep for that because it, I remember them. So, and I didn't. I have had some people offer, so I may go back to them because I've got another 4 books to write.
I can't actually imagine that there are many books in the airline genre.
You'd be surprised. I actually
Really?
dug around because I wanted to see. The one is by Heather Poole, and she writes about the mad days of, and I think she's probably 10 years younger than me. But she is quite a celebrity. She used to do articles on airline life, crew life, and posts or blogs. And then she compiled it into a book. It's called Cruising Altitude. And of course, how the Americans did it and how the South Africans did it was desperately different. Oh, and my dear friend Debbie Shannon is an American girl, and she worked for Pan Am. She was
Okay.
actually the poster child for Pan Am. So she was fantastically helpful in this book because she'd say, she'd prompt me because she'd say, "Well, what about this?" So she was super helpful. In fact, more helpful than my own my bestie because but Debbie was very, she was great. But oh my gosh, a difference like night and day between South African Airways or Air Baobab and
So
Pan Am.
when you write, are you a planner? So do you plan out your whole journey, or do you let the story happen as you write? Because I know that some writers prefer it one way or the other.
I think I'm a pantser. So I plan and I plot and I fly by the seat of my pants most of the time. But what I found with these books, and I didn't do it with the other books, and I think because this was such a different process for me, and it was so novel, um, I found that writing an outline, a detailed outline, was really helpful.
Yeah.
And then I didn't really refer to the outline. I just got it sorted in my head. So, and then in doing so, then I could let it flow. And I also did a deep character dive into each of these girls. This one I knew pretty well, but um, and these women, all four of them, are based on my first American friends. When we moved to USA, we moved around a lot. So I'd make friends and then we'd move, and that was that. They were acquaintances really. Um, and our first place we really settled was Virginia. And I joined a real estate office. And these women were so lovely to me. They just embraced me and welcomed me into their little group. And they're wonderful. And we used to go on holiday. Um, for 25 years, we went away for a week every year, no matter where we lived. So I would fly into Virginia and then we'd go skiing, or they'd fly to Dallas and spend the week with me. And my husband would go back to South Africa so we could have a girls' week. And so they've become my really first true and dear American friends. So each one of them have a book. So there's a lovely connection there. So I was really writing. This one is the second book, and this is based on my friend Debbie, who but she's become an air hostess in South Africa for this purpose. But I had a personality in mind. She's so giving and loving and so unusually soft, and um, so that helped because
Yeah.
I had a real visual of somebody. I didn't
Yeah,
have to think about
that's a
character.
do you think that's a good way to do it? Because I kind of wonder, when you're trying to create a personality or a character from scratch, it's really difficult to sometimes marry, you want them to be mean here, but then they're all this loving over here. It makes it really
Yes,
difficult. So that's a really good idea.
it is. It really is. All my characters have been modeled on or a mesh of people.
Yeah.
Iris from War Serenade was a mixture of my mother and Alana, my best friend. So that was her personality. And every I think that's so important is for me because I don't have to create it to know it. I already know it and love it. And I know the flaws and I know so it's kind of a cheat really, but and of course we can expound on that too, um, especially when we change their names, which is what I did here, because Debbie is now named Bree. And I said to them, "What do you want your name to be?" And she said, "Oh, I like Bree and I like what was the other?" And I said, "You can't have that one, sounds like a hooker." So we settled on Bree.
Let's hope there's no hookers out there called Brie.
I say, "Go to it, girls."
So are there any characters that you based on yourself?
Probably closest is this one. Of course, much more neurotic than me. Um, and but yeah, I think so because I think so. But Bree's a cool story because this is called Timeless Pirouette, and Bree's husband worked for the Act when she met. Well, he was working for SABC when she left. She didn't leave him, but when she came on the soiree with the girls in Howell, Massachusetts, and so she had dreamt about that she dreamt she was speaking Russian and French when she was dreaming. And she um, woke up in the crew rest and she just dreamt that she was a ballerina at the Bolshoi in 1887. And and they find she arrives in Hull and she's very nervous. She doesn't know what to expect. And but then in the first book the girls kind of mesh. They they find things that they like about each other in Lucky's perspective. And at the end of Lucky's book she realizes that she's found people that are her people. She likes them. And at the very end of the book she says, clear the skies for us to fly in. I have your wings. And she's looking up at them and they're standing up listening to her on a call about a serial killer is on the loose. So and that's the overall arc of the story is this serial killer and how she eventually catches him while the girls are there. But each
Wow.
book is a book unto itself. And then Bree talks about her falling in love with a beggar, and she's a ballerina in 1887. And he's the one who pushed her, pushed her, pushed her, pushed her, pushed her to become better than she thought she was. And she ends up being a ballerina and then wakes up. And anyway, that's kind of the premise. So
I think
it's
it's wonderful, and I think so you've got 2 of the 4, so that's where you are now.
yes,
And could they
yes.
stand alone, or do you think they have to be read in series?
I'm trying to make them stand alone. It's hard though because so much of uh the repartee is in the first book when they get to know each other and how the airline worked and you know the nuances of that they all connect with. That is
Yeah.
their common denominator. So
Yeah,
when you read it in the second book, maybe out of context, it doesn't mean you can go back to the first and understand it better. Then read it
yeah,
the second time.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So you've spoken about the differences, obviously, between SAA, Baobab Air, and Pan Am or any of the American airlines. Now, living in the States, of course, there's lots of differences in the way you live your life, really, in comparison to what you lived in South Africa. And besides
Mm,
the usual, there's less burglar bars or all of that stuff. What
yes.
cultural differences did you notice when you first got there that you've now just absorbed and accepted, or you've just living it now yourself?
That's such a good question. Being married to a South African, I think, keeps us grounded, both of us, because we always try and retain what South Africa taught us, which was so much. You
Yeah,
know, um, I think gratitude is lacking where I live, and I think that we, not everybody, but certainly for a lot of people, and it's easy to just forget to be grateful for anything. Having a leg that can move and an eye that can see and a house to live in. I mean, um, and I really think being together has helped us not only acclimate smoothly, but it's kind of weird, Donnie. You almost exist on a double plane. You know, we say, I say to my husband, why hasn't our boy child phoned on Thanksgiving? And then he says, well, it's really not a South African holiday. And, and then we're okay with that. So he didn't say, hi, thanks for having me. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's a, it's not a double standard. It's a dual existence.
Yeah, and I find that it's interesting you say that, but there's an element of no man's land in that existence because
I agree.
I find that here in the UK, so in January it'll be 30 years since I've been in the UK. And so if my other half who's British, if he makes a reference to British culture before 30 years ago, I have no idea what he's talking about. But in the last 30 years, I don't know what's happened in South Africa. I
Very
mean,
true.
I know the from conversations, I get a flavor from the news, but ultimately the cultural references that my friends over the last 30 years and family have made, I can't relate to those. But in the UK, I sound different. I'm a lot funnier than they think I am. Like, I think I'm really funny. Um, so I we are different, and it's quite evident when you live in another culture, and specifically if you've formed your foundations in another culture, and it's finding your place in that no man's land, I think.
Yes, I think you are very, very right. It is finding your place and maybe holding on to values in from one culture and being open-minded enough to explore challenges in the new culture. And most of all, not having any regrets.
Yeah.
Because if you do, you're stuffed. Because then you're really stuck in no man's land. Because we've been here too for 38 years. So but just like me, we South African, we speak South African together. But I think I I speak like this all the time. I know you do too.
Yeah.
We don't, but now our kids who came here, Ethel's kids who came when they were 11 and 13, speak to us in South African and speak to their friends in American. So, and I think to some degree, we're still influencing them. They still make African chicken, you know. What are you having for Christmas? Oh, African chicken. And we all know what African chicken, the family knows what African chicken is.
Actually, you just made me remind me, what is that chicken dish with the green peppers? Chicken a la no, a la
Not chicken
king,
a la
chicken
king.
a la
A la
king.
king. I make it into a coma. Oh, the chicken a la king, everybody, it's in the book. It's in the book.
Is it? Oh my god, I wanna have it. I'm gonna make it. You just reminded me. So
I
Jill,
know.
tell me what is next. So, but the next 2 characters, who are the next 2 characters in the book?
The next two characters, Chantel has her regression shows her to be the illegitimate daughter of Caesar Titus and the Queen of Judea.
Wow.
And Rome was very threatened by Titus and the Queen's affiliation. They had a horrid love affair for 5 years, and Rome insisted, because it was a democracy, they could insisted that she has no part or even appears, doesn't even visit Rome. So his father was the Caesar, and then when he died, Titus got the job. So, and we find her in a turret. It's really not a retold fairy tale by any means, but um, in Herculaneum, which is right next door to Pompeii, little talked about. I just saw an article the other day about Herculaneum, but we talk about Pompeii, 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 but um, and they actually were hit first with mud because they were closer to the base of the mountain. Anyway, so she is the illegitimate daughter of these two. The Titus is claimed, but can't claim her as a daughter because she would have been stoned to death. So
Mm.
she's brought up in this palatial suite up there. But as she gets, she can't leave without somebody accompanying her, and she doesn't go out of the palace. Out of this, it's not a palace; it's their summer home on the ocean, and she falls. As she makes her debut, she's a lyre player and she sings, and she makes her debut, and this she sees this boy, and she's just a girl. She's 16, and he's probably 19. Oh, she says to her father, because she's getting stroppy, and she says, I want out of here. I'm done now. I've been here for 16 years. I need to live my life. And he says, well, you can't. You'll get into trouble. And she said, I need to be seen. So he allows her to make her debut as his protege. And she does, and she sees this boy, and her father sees how men react to her as she's singing and playing the lyre. And he installs beams into and every night, because she's so wily, she'd get past the guard if she wanted to. She wears a choker with these things on, so she can move
Oh,
about her room, but she can't escape. She's chained into the room. And
that
anyway,
sounds like a life of therapy.
oh yeah,
You
definitely
need a bit of therapy after that.
after
Um,
that one.
and specifically, and I suppose there's a real, an interesting humanness in that, because we all have those. Well, it depends on what people believe, but generally there are experiences that would create a situation for you now that you have to deal with, that might be generational trauma. It might be
Exactly.
whatever your belief is. So that would have a real impact on how she would then respond in real life, and she could
Yes,
then justify, not justify, but then understand why she behaves in certain ways.
ways. And you see, they don't understand it until they see what their real life used to be.
Yeah.
Because in their dream, they only dream the nice parts. They don't
Yeah.
see the actual part, which is what happens in the past life regression
Yeah.
that Lucky conducts on each of them. And then every one of them has a happy ending.
Oh, well, that's a
They
relief.
all gonna find their man. So that's a good thing.
And so
So we
then
got
have you got a timeline then? Because then you've got that one and then you've got the 4th one.
yeah, we've got the fourth one I don't know anything about other than who my protagonist is. And then I've got another two. So I hope to do two this year. It depends. I'm not gonna push myself. I'm gonna do it as it flows. And I was planning on doing two this year and two next year, and finishing them off at the end of 2026, and maybe continuing Lucky on a different journey. I don't know. I won't
How
decide.
exciting. So as always, you have your website. Is it jillwallace.com, is it?
Yes, yes, and I've
Okay.
got a bookshop now on my site. Yes, it's called Bookshop and Goodies. So, and I actually have lucky packets on there. So I can box
Oh,
up a lucky packet. Well, I want it to be like that. You remember lucky packets and how
oh
excited they
yeah,
made us?
love them.
We used to beg our parents for a lucky packet, and there was such rubbish inside. Remember the two hard sweets, and then that little thing, and then a little toy that was made in China. And but man, they were the most exciting things. So I'm doing lucky packets, and they're boxes, um, with books in them, and various South African goodies. And then the books themselves, all my books are on there, electronic
Okay.
as well as in print. And what else? Oh, also I've married with a they're called Touch of Grey. They're a dog rescue.
Okay.
And they're three women, they're amazing. They snatch just before euthanization any puppies who are elder, um, or have special needs, because they're the least likely
Mm,
that people want them.
yeah.
They take them from shelters. Well, she said if people die and they leave a dog, the poor little puppy's left with nothing. So they rescue them, and they find foster homes and forever homes for them. So anything I sell on my website, they're going to get 11.11%. The angel number 1111. They'll
Oh.
get 1111% of everything I sell on this site. So that's cool.
Oh, what a lovely, lovely way to make a difference. Oh,
Oh, I
and
hope
as
it
a dog
does.
person, you and me, I totally get that. I just
I
my
know
heart
you
bleeds. I just
do.
wanna have 150,000 dogs.
Me too. Me too. In fact, it was so cute, Donnie. One of my dear friends went mad. I told her about this, and she went mad. She just started making stuff. And I said, Karen, would you stop it? I can't sell it on my site. And then I realized I couldn't sell it on my site because there's too much legalese for me to sell the actual product on my site. But she made Doggy and me necklaces. So
Oh,
a string of pearls for the dog and a little pair of wings, because Tula from this book inspired her. So,
ah.
and then she's got bracelets for mommy, and then chokers or little necklaces for the dog. So cute. I must show you one actually because it's so cute. Anyway, they're having a lovely um, annual day of fundraising on Saturday. So she and I are going to go over and peep in and say hi. And all her jewels are for sale. So
Well,
she
send
can
us
make
the
a
link
fortune.
and we'll pop that on as well because that would be
Oh,
really
thank
lovely
you.
for people to have a look at that. Because
Lovely.
I think people would be really interested in that kind of, that side of because yes, we all do what we do, but we also need to help a little bit along the way. And
I
and I think
know.
that if
Just
we
what we
all did
can.
that, the world would be a different place if we all did that.
Wouldn't it just, Thorny? Wouldn't it
It's the
just?
simplest things that we can do that would make the biggest
I
difference.
know. I know.
But
This is
Jill,
so
as
true.
always, I just love chatting to you. I love your stories. I think they are so exciting and
Oh,
so interesting. And I hope that
oh.
the next series comes as easy as the first lot has come. And I
Thank
wish you
you.
the very best for your Christmas period as well.
Oh, thank you, Dorney. You're always such a pleasure. And thank you for having me. It was so fun to talk about my stuff and to talk to you. You're a joy. Thank you.
Thanks, Jill. Bye bye.
Cheers, cheers.
Ah.